Upon learning that he has a heart problem, a man decides to seduce a woman before he passes away. One day, Brigitte, a patient in a private clinic, disrobes before she dives into the pond. She's using disobedience as a way to entice her doctor to marry her. But Dr. Pierre-François, who witnesses the spectacle by the window, isn't impressed and believes she needs more medication. At that hour, Pierre-François is off duty because he is undergoing a cardiac evaluation facilitated by his wife and colleague, Dr. Gabby. Meanwhile, at a traveling fair, Odile watches with great interest as the courtesans in a burlesque tent perform sensual dances to attract potential customers. Jean-Jean, the attraction's owner, zeroes his attention on her and assumes that she wants to be part of the act. However, Odile simply gives him a polite smile and abruptly leaves, not wanting to interrupt his business. Before she can leave the fair, Jean-Jean chases after her and asks her if she needs a job. Odile denies it and explains that she actually has a career as a tennis player. Despite this, Jean-Jean believes that she wants to be part of his show, so he offers her a position to become one of his courtesans. Odile starts to consider his proposition, but she has yet to agree, so Jean-Jean allows her to think about it. He then informs her that they're still in the area until the end of the week, so she can return and provide her answer. Back in the clinic, Gabby discovers that Pierre-François' heart has a constriction, so she prevents him from committing strenuous activity, particularly making love at night, as it might cause him a fatal attack. Pierre-François assures his wife that he won't have trouble in that regard, admitting that he's way past his best. Later, during his session with Brigitte, Pierre-François becomes entranced as he watches her dry herself after swimming in the pond. Brigitte senses his gaze, so she teases him by encouraging him to start their session. The neuropsychiatrist reprimands her for her antics, but he proceeds to move forward. First, Brigitte admits that she wasn't sensible this morning, but she explains that she only dived into the pond because she remembered him promising to marry her if she disobeyed him. Pierre-François is surprised and doubts her claims, as he doesn't remember such a promise. Brigitte dismisses his words and starts enumerating her plans for their alleged wedding. Not in the mood for her nonsense, Pierre-François decides to change the subject by asking if she's taking her prescribed medicine. The woman confirms by recounting that she takes them every morning and night, just like how she thinks of him every day. This further fuels his growing disinterest in his career, so he abruptly ends their session. That night, Pierre-François contacts his ex-wife, Chantal, to inform her that he'll return a painting, explaining that he's disinterested in it. The following day, on the train, Pierre-François encounters Odile, who's fast asleep on the train seat. The man finds her attractive, and her beauty awakens his dormant craving for sensuality. Unbeknownst to him, Odile is dreaming about displaying affection with her lover in public, which is a desire she wants to make a reality. Suddenly the woman rouses from her sleep, and she's surprised to find Pierre-François towering over her. Instead of chastising him for intruding in her space, Odile requests him to alert her of their arrival at their destination. Pierre-François is delighted to help her, informing her that they have the same stop. Shortly after, Pierre-François meets Chantal at the beach and shares his condition with her. Chantal becomes concerned for him, but the man makes fun of her reaction to make light of his troubles. Nearby, Pierre-François finds Odile having fun on the beach, and her alluring looks further make him want her. After meeting Chantal, Pierre-François boards the train home and he searches for Odile, hoping to share another trip with her. Unfortunately, the woman is nowhere to be found, leaving him heartbroken. Back home, Pierre-François comforts Brigitte as she expresses her negative reaction whenever she gets intimate with a man. She seeks advice on how she should deal with her problem, but the neuropsychiatrist starts to feel exhausted due to the steaminess of her fantasies. He brands them as nonsensical and urges her to keep them all to herself. Insulted, she splashes her drink on him, and Pierre-François starts to feel a tightening in his chest. The following day, Pierre-François decides to exercise by riding his bicycle. However, he encounters a problem when he accelerates uncontrollably on a hill, leading him to crash into a tennis court. His worry about his health dissipates when he sees Odile practicing, and he feels as if a miracle happened now that he meets her again. After Odile's practice, Pierre-François tries to initiate a conversation with her, reminding her of their first encounter on the train. To his dismay, the woman ignores him and heads to her car. Not backing down, the man follows her and pretends he's lost just to prolong his time with her. Odile is in a hurry to head home, so she tries to drive her car even if Pierre-François is still in front of her. Though offended at her actions, Pierre-François pleads with her to spare him some of her time because he wants to tell her something. He confesses his attraction to her, but Odile thinks he's only after her body, so she advises him to call a courtesan to relieve his frustrations. Pierre-François clarifies that he wants to get to know her, but if she prefers to keep her anonymity, he requests that she allow him to watch her practice occasionally. Confused, Odile wonders what the purpose of his request is, so he explains that he just wants to watch her practice. He even proposes to pay her as he can't resist her beauty, which brings a smile to Odile's face. Even though she's pleased with his compliments, Odile refuses because she doesn't have time. She needs to prepare for a competitive exam, but Pierre-François encourages her to abandon her preparation and attend dinner with him tonight. That evening, Odile ditches her date with Pierre-François and heads to the fair instead. She watches as Jean-Jean introduces his courtesans to entice the crowd into purchasing a ticket to their show, but her interest in being part of it still lingers. Suddenly, Pierre-François approaches her and doesn't chastise her for not showing up to their date, for he believes she's also afraid like him. He worries that she might not recognize him due to his newly shaven beard and asks for her opinion on his new look. Odile compliments him, emphasizing that he looks youthful, giving Pierre-François a boost in confidence. Just then, Jean-Jean notices the pair in the crowd, so he urges Odile to allow Pierre-François to purchase a ticket for his show. He guarantees that when Pierre-François enters his burlesque tent, he'll be a transformed man. Pierre-François thinks he's bluffing, so he encourages Odile to leave. But the woman refuses. With conviction, Odile desires to enter and watch the attraction. Pierre-François forbids her, claiming that it is infested with mites. Still, Odile is interested in the show, so he has no choice but to follow her. Inside the burlesque tent, Odile watches the dancer with great interest, for she longs to become a performer like her. On the other hand, Pierre-François is trying to control himself, afraid that he might suffer an attack. After their date at the fair, Odile drives Pierre-François back to the clinic, and the man expresses his delight at how their night has turned out. To his surprise, Odile isn't impressed with their date. Upset, he tries to make a move on her, but Odile feels disrespected, leading her to push him out of her car. Moments later, at Odile's house, the woman experiences a dizzy spell, followed by a nosebleed, leaving her worried. The following morning, a doctor leaves Odile's residence after checking her health. The sick woman is in her bed, dreaming about one of her fantasies. Here, she dreams of Pierre-François watching her bare physique, which excites her. Then, she enters a changing room, where she faints all of a sudden. Later that day, Jean-Jean interrogates Odile about her relationship with Pierre-François. She lies that he's her uncle, but she's more concerned about the reason why he pretended he didn't recognize her last night. In his defense, he's at work mode, so he's more focused on his job. Moving on, Jean-Jean informs her that they'll travel to Angoulême if she decides to become one of her dancers. Odile is confused as to why they have to travel there, so he explains that it's a perfect place to preserve her anonymity. At the fair, Odile interacts with Jean-Jean's courtesans, and the woman learns from Chipper that they take on little jobs in Paris once the season is over. That aside, Odile asks them if their audience tries to sleep with them, and Siska confirms. She reveals that there are men who offer them 400 francs for a moment with them, but she clarifies that she didn't entertain them. However, she points out that if he likes the man, she might consider sleeping with him. For Wagon, whenever she sees the audience's desire for them, she feels inspired to give them her full effort in performing. This time, the courtesans ask Odile what she wants from the audience, and the woman reveals that they want to drive them crazy. On the same day, Odile is coaching her students in tennis when she receives a phone call. Upon answering it, she's surprised to learn that Pierre-François is at the end of the line. The man apologizes for his rudeness last night, and she accepts it. Strange enough, she finds their encounter to be flattering, which makes Pierre-François think she's flirting with him. Odile changes the subject by asking him if he's free on Sunday. Pierre-François confirms without hesitation, so Odile invites him to accompany her to Angoulême. The man is surprised at the location, as Angoulême is known as the wildest city in France. To convince him, Odile lies that she'll be visiting her aunt, so Pierre-François agrees to accompany her. When Sunday comes, Pierre-François rides in Jean-Jean's car, and to his surprise, he finds himself enjoying his ride with them. Not long after, in Angoulême, Jean-Jean drops Pierre-François off at a restaurant and orders him to wait for them there. Jean-Jean takes Odile to a fair, which is managed by his acquaintance, the aunt. As soon as he sees them, the aunt approaches them, and Jean-Jean introduces Odile to him. Jean-Jean prides himself on Odile's athleticism, but the aunt is unimpressed because he also has courtesans who are like her. Odile's smile starts to fade, but since they're already there, she has no choice but to push through in the audition. However, once she's on stage, Odile admits that she didn't prepare a routine, but the aunt insists that she perform. Odile repeats that she is unprepared, so she asks if she can just disrobe instead. Before making his decision, the aunt asks Jean-Jean if Odile is his girlfriend, and the man confirms. With this in mind, the aunt prevents her from disrobing and just urges her to dance. Following her audition, Odile secretly tends to her nosebleed when she hears Jean-Jean and the aunt bidding each other farewell. Worried about her fate, she asks him if his associate doesn't want her, but Jean-Jean assures her that he's considering her. Changing the topic, Odile asks why Jean-Jean referred to her as his girlfriend. He explains that she must have a lover to bring a spark to her life. Moreover, he has observed that she's lacking it, so he warns her that it may affect her performance. Odile says she doesn't need a lover, but Jean-Jean begs to differ. Later in the restaurant, Odile teases Pierre-François for sulking, and the man doesn't deny it. He questions if her alleged aunt is working on the fair, but Odile refuses to disclose it. Instead, she expresses her concern as she assumed he enjoyed their little trip. Pierre-François voices that he indeed enjoyed it, but he can't deny how upset he is that she keeps on giving him false hope about the possibility of them sleeping together. Now, he feels insulted that he has traveled 100 miles and stayed in a greasy restaurant just to be denied any affection. Jean-Jean interjects in their conversation by pointing out that Odile doesn't actually care about him because of his age. Tired of the conversation, Odile wishes to return home, so she requests Lulu, the waitress, to tell her how to get to the train station. That night, Pierre-François encounters a series of misfortune during his stay in Angoulême. First, he's staying in a run-down motel room with poor ventilation, so he has to open the windows to breathe better. Second, he has to use the public restroom, but it's occupied, so he has to urinate outside. Third, a dog chases him after he finishes his business, leaving him terrified for his life. By dawn, Pierre-François is surprised that Odile joins him in his room, especially since she has decided to return home. The woman embraces him while he lies, but Pierre-François feels disgusted by himself for wanting her. Regardless of his words, Odile wants to see his face, so the man turns his head in her direction. At that moment, Pierre-François starts to become delirious. He tells her about a supernatural vision he had, in which he saw a beautiful woman emerge from a well. For this reason, Pierre-François decides to abandon his pampered life and even his career as a neuropsychiatrist. Instead, he's willing to become a horse butcher in Angoulême or even a clown in Jean-Jean's attraction so that he can be with her. He informs her that he had a conversation with Jean-Jean, and he observes that he's considering his proposition. Since Odile appears to have second thoughts, Pierre-François stresses that they don't have time to back out. Out of nowhere, he confesses how badly he wanted to bed her last night. Due to his admission, he begins to feel parched, so he gets out of bed to drink from his thermos. Once he quenches his thirst, Pierre-François admits that she's the last woman in his life. He explains that he realized this when he saw her sleeping on the train. Because of his declaration, Odile eventually makes love to him to make his final hours worthwhile. After the deed, Pierre-François starts to feel the symptoms of the attack, so he encourages Odile that they should just sleep in each other's arms. When he falls asleep, Odile gets up from bed and realizes that she has another nosebleed. That morning, Jean-Jean barges into Pierre-François' motel room and orders Odile to get prepared for her debut. Pierre-François suddenly awakens and feels disoriented about what's going on. Therefore, Jean-Jean informs him that Odile will be performing today. Shortly after, at the aunt's tent, he inspects Odile's body and is delighted with her physique. Since he believes she's Jean-Jean's lover, he wants Odile to remain clothed, but she has to remove her undergarment. While Odile is preparing, Pierre-François decides to wait for her at the courtesan's lounge. He's surprised when one of the aunt's dancers storms inside the room who appears to be upset. The woman feels disgusted at how the audience treats them, so she announces that she won't work for him anymore. Because of this, the aunt urges Odile to perform for the audience. Before heading out, Jean-Jean encourages her, and the woman smiles in gratitude. However, when Odile starts her debut, she begins to feel nauseous, but she endures it for the sake of the show, She proceeds to disrobe, which earns the audience's approval. Despite the pain she's experiencing, Odile perseveres to perform, only for her to collapse into the crowd. Pierre-François becomes concerned for her, so he weaves through the throng of people just to reach her. Unfortunately for him, he feels heartbroken to discover that Odile has passed away with blood dripping out of her nose. Following this, Jean-Jean drives Pierre-François home, and the pair are mournful after reading Odile's letter. In the said letter, the woman discloses that she had experienced another hemorrhage yesterday. It turns out that she's been experiencing it frequently, so she plans to return to the hospital for an operation. Back in their city, Pierre-François wakes up in the car alone and decides to walk home. As he reflects on his journey with Odile, he comes to terms with his desires and accepts the uncertainty of what lies ahead.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.